What would you do if your bride vanished at the altar only to be replaced by a barefoot stranger with a street vendor smile, who would soon steal your heart? The sunlight poured like gold through the stained glass windows of St. Clement Cathedral, casting rich colors across polished marble floors. Every pew was filled with society's finest. Women shimmered in designer gowns, men straightened their silk ties, and the whispers behind diamond-studded programs buzzed with anticipation. At the altar stood Graham Whitmore, tech billionaire, media darling, and one of the most powerful men in New York. His tuxedo was custom from Milan, the button's actual mother of pearl. His posture, impeccable. His watch, a vintage Patek Philippe, and he'd checked it twice. Next to him stood Charlotte Hayes, his bride, glowing in ivory satin. The off-shoulder gown framed her swan-like neck, her veil a sheer trail of mist behind her. She looked every bit the picture-perfect bride, graceful, polished, adored by everyone who mattered. And Graham, he looked tense. The officiant, a soft-spoken bishop with snow-white hair, gave a polite cough and turned a page in his Bible. "Shall we proceed to the vows?" Charlotte smiled. Then, gently, she raised her hand. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sweet. "I just need to use the restroom. I'll be right back." A polite laugh rippled through the pews. Graham tilted his head. "You're serious?" he asked under his breath. "I just need a minute," she whispered, giving his hand a light squeeze. "I'll be back before you say I do." And with that, she turned and walked floated down the aisle, her heels silent on the runner, her veil trailing behind like a cloud. 10 minutes passed. 15. Graham's jaw tightened as the buzz in the crowd grew. He turned to his best man and murmured, "Go check on her." The man returned moments later, pale and tense. "She's not in the bathroom," he said quietly. "She's not anywhere in the church." A gasp. Then a dozen phones buzzed at once. Texts, tweets, posts. The name Charlotte Hayes started trending before Graham could step off the altar. Whispers rippled like a wave. She ran. She really ran. She left him at the altar. Graham didn't wait. He stormed out the cathedral's massive doors, past cameras and paparazzi, ignoring the shouted questions. He yanked his phone from his pocket and dialed. No answer. Again, voicemail. The maid of honor stammered, "I don't know what happened." She didn't say a word to me. An hour later, the once-packed cathedral was nearly empty. The scent of white roses lingered in the air. On the front steps, reporters dissected the drama live. The Whitmore wedding, one of the year's most anticipated events, has ended in shocking silence. Graham's driver opened the car door. "Sir, where to?" Graham looked back at the towering cathedral. "Anywhere but here." The Rolls-Royce glided through the streets of Manhattan, but Graham didn't speak. He stared out the tinted window, eyes dark with humiliation. It wasn't just the rejection. It was the spectacle, the story it would become. The mighty Graham Whitmore. Dumped live. Eventually, he asked the driver to pull over. A random corner in Brooklyn. No cameras, no expectations. He stepped out, removed his tuxedo jacket, and leaned against the car, loosening his tie. And for the first time in a very long time, he looked lost. Across the street, a group of young men laughed around a smoky food stand. A woman stood at its side, her hair in neat, tight braids, her voice commanding, bold, alive. "Guy, if you no want pay for extra meat, carry your rubber and go." "You think I be charity?" The boys howled with laughter as she handed them suya skewers and flicked sweat off her brow with the back of her hand. She wore a fitted blouse tucked into faded jeans, a cooler strapped to her waist, no makeup. No pretense, and she was magnetic. Graham squinted. "Who is she?" His driver, still in the car, answered without being asked. "Name's Raina Brooks. Sells food, braids hair, runs errands fierce like fire. As if on cue, Raina tossed a cold soda to a kid running by. "Tell your mama I say thanks for the akara yesterday." Graham blinked. She wasn't the type of woman who'd ever be in his world. She was the type that would roll her eyes at it. And yet, he found himself walking toward her. She noticed him immediately. "Hey, uncle!" "I no get change for $5 shift small," he chuckled. "I'm not here for a drink." "Then you blocking my breeze. I want to talk to you, privately." She folded her arms. "Talk wettin'? You think say I be escort?" "No," he said, eyes steady. "I want you to be my wife." The street froze. Even the suya smoke seemed to stop mid-air. Then Raina burst into laughter. "You done chop madness? Which kind joke be this?" But Graham wasn't laughing. "I'll pay you. 30 million. Just for 6 months. Appear in public. Smile for cameras. No expectations. You live your life. I live mine." She narrowed her eyes. 30 million. Cash or transfer?" Graham smirked. "Any way you want it." She looked him up and down. "Oga Billionaire, you just hired yourself a wife." The Rolls-Royce cruised slowly down the Brooklyn street, the sun now casting a golden haze over cracked sidewalks and neon-lit bodegas. Inside, Graham Whitmore sat slumped in silence, his tuxedo jacket tossed beside him, his black silk tie loosened at the collar. The cathedral, the headlines, the whispers, they all played in his mind like a cruel symphony on loop. He had been humiliated, not just as a man, but as a brand. Charlotte hadn't merely left him. She had walked out on everything he represented: power, prestige, perfection. "Pull over," he said suddenly. "Here, sir?" the driver asked, glancing around the busy corner where smoke curled from a food stand and street chatter echoed like music. "Here," Graham repeated. He stepped out into the heat and exhaust fumes, the weight of his name heavier than the designer tux he wore. Across the street, Raina Brooks was in the middle of a full-on argument with a customer. "You want free extra meat? Go marry a butcher," she snapped, waving a suya skewer like a weapon. Laughter erupted from the crowd gathered around her cart. Her voice carried, sharp and lively, flavored with rhythm and street grit. Her braids were pulled back into a low bun, her blouse tight but not indecent, her jeans faded from wear, her feet in rubber slippers. But she stood with a confidence that no runway model could fake, and Graham, the man who had everything, couldn't stop staring. He didn't know why he walked toward her. Maybe it was the freedom in her laugh. Maybe it was how real she looked in a world that had just collapsed under the weight of appearances. But walk he did, and she noticed. "Hey, uncle. You want suya, or you just like standing in people's breeze?" Raina asked, eyes narrowing. "I'm not here for food," Graham said. "Then move, I beg," she replied. "Some of us working?" He cracked the faintest smile. "I want to talk privately." She raised an eyebrow. "You sure you know they lost?" "No." "I'm sure," he said. "I want you to marry me." The street froze. Plastic chairs stopped creaking. Grill smoke hung mid-air. Even the loudspeaker from the nearby phone shop went quiet. Raina blinked. "Say what now?" 30 million naira, Graham said calmly. 6 months. No funny business. Just public appearances. You live your life, I live mine. "Like actress?" she said, laughing. "You want casting call or wettin'?" "I want a partner who won't walk out on me because of pressure," he said flatly. "I want someone who knows how to handle real life, someone unshakable." She stared at him, one hand on her hip. 30 million, cash or transfer?" "Any way you want it," he replied. The corner burst into shouts and laughter. Someone screamed, "Na lie! This man day joke!" But Raina didn't laugh. She studied Graham like she was pricing him. Not just his watch, his posture, his words, the way he looked like power and pain. "You want wedding for TV or real one?" she asked, folding her arms. "Real," he said. "No love, no touch," she clarified. "No expectations," he answered. Just the roll. She gave a short, sharp nod. Deal. Within the hour, the Rolls-Royce returned to St. Clement Cathedral, but this time the bride wasn't draped in Vera Wang or escorted by bridesmaids. She sat in the back seat beside Graham, her rubber slippers tapping against the floor mat, her drink cooler shoved into the trunk. As they pulled up, a few photographers still lingered outside the cathedral, waiting to capture what remained of a broken billionaire's day. When Raina stepped out, the silence was deafening. A woman in frayed jeans, tight blouse, calloused hands, and she walked straight up the steps without flinching. Inside, the air was still thick with perfume, whispers, and disbelief. The wedding planner clutched her clipboard, confused. The officiant blinked. "Sir, where is Miss Hayes?" "She's not coming," Graham replied. "This is my bride." Raina didn't smile. She stood tall, arms folded, daring anyone to speak. A few guests still lingered, old money types with pinched lips and pearl necklaces. One man whispered loudly, "He's lost his mind." Another asked, "Is this some PR stunt?" The pastor adjusted his glasses. "Sir, she's not properly dressed." Graham didn't blink. "Double your fee, marry us now." Raina leaned toward him. "Oga, you sure say in a real wedding we do so?" "Just play your part," he murmured. And so they did. In front of a half-empty cathedral, with flower petals still strewn across the aisle and judgment hanging in the air, Graham Whitmore married Raina Brooks. When asked if she would love and cherish him, she said with a smirk, "For 30 million, I go try." A few guests snorted. One woman faintly gasped, but the vows were said. The rings exchanged. The kiss was brief. And just like that, Raina went from street vendor to Mrs. Whitmore. As they exited the cathedral, cameras clicked wildly. Headlines would scream by morning. Tiffany runs, Graham rebounds with mystery street bride. Billionaire marries stranger hours after being left at the altar. From Suya stand to mansion gates, who is Raina Brooks? But in that moment, Raina turned to Graham and said calmly, "Just so you know, I know they carry last." And Graham, staring at her with a look he didn't recognize in himself, whispered, "I believe you." The Rolls-Royce glided through the iron gates of Whitmore Estate, a sprawling mansion tucked deep within Manhattan's most exclusive enclave. It was the kind of property people whispered about, where fountains danced on command, and chandeliers sparkled like frozen stars behind glass walls. In the back seat, Raina Brooks sat quietly, still in her faded jeans, still in her rubber slippers. Her drink cooler had been abandoned in the trunk. Her only accessory was the silent fire in her eyes. Graham Whitmore, sitting beside her, said nothing. His face unreadable, his posture stiff, like he was trying to hold on to the last shreds of control. The car came to a stop in the circular driveway. Uniformed staff peeked through the curtain-lined windows, confusion etched across their faces. This wasn't the bride they had been preparing for. This woman, this new Mrs. Whitmore, was a storm. Raina stepped out, bare feet brushing polished stone. She stared up at the mansion's towering entrance, eyes narrowing. "House Abbey Museum?" she murmured. Graham didn't reply. He was already walking ahead. She followed slowly, turning her head every few steps, like someone visiting a dream she hadn't asked to enter. Inside, the air was crisp with luxury. Floors gleamed like mirrors. Vases stood taller than she was. The scent of white roses wafted through the hall, artificial and elegant. "Guest wing, left corridor, second door," Graham said curtly, not turning around. Raina raised an eyebrow. "You they fear me?" "I don't mix business with pleasure," he replied. "Good." "Me neither, I know. They kiss man way behave like robot." He turned then, jaw clenched, but didn't respond. Just walked away. Raina stood there, alone in a foyer large enough to house her entire street block. She glanced around, then kicked off her slippers with a smirk. Now here dream begin, ain't? Okay, make we see. Later that night, Sloane Whitmore, Graham's younger sister, stormed into the mansion like a gust of glitter and Gucci. She was all leopard print, red lipstick, and drama. "I heard you got married," she said, tossing her sunglasses onto a velvet settee, and to a total stranger. She glanced around, then shouted toward the hallway. "Where is she? I want to meet my new sister-in-law." As if summoned by divine mischief, Raina appeared at the top of the grand staircase, same jeans, same blouse. Hair pulled into a messy bun, face clean, proud. Sloane blinked. "Oh, wow." "You weren't joking." "Nice to meet you," Raina said evenly. Sloane rushed forward and hugged her. "I love your spirit already." "But girl, no offense, you need help." Raina pulled back, arms crossed. "Help with what?" Sloane raised her hands. "Just saying, you've got potential. But you can't be standing beside Graham looking like a rebellious intern. We need wardrobe makeup, maybe even etiquette." "Don't," Graham warned sharply from behind. "She's not a project." Raina turned to him, calm but firm. "And you're not my owner. Don't speak for me." Sloane clapped slowly, grinning. "Oh, I'm going to love this marriage." The next morning, the mansion woke to the sound of stilettos and stylists. Sloane had called reinforcements. Garment bags floated through the hall like ghosts. Makeup artists wheeled in kits the size of small fridges. A hairstylist from Paris arrived carrying a curling wand like a sacred relic. Raina sat in a plush armchair in the middle of the living room, arms folded, face unreadable. "This is ridiculous," she muttered as a foundation brush swept across her cheek. "No," Sloane said, holding up a slinky emerald dress. "This is transformation, trust me. Graham may be a frozen iceberg, but he's going to melt tonight." One assistant held up a pair of metallic heels. "I can't walk in those," Raina said. "You'll learn," Sloane grinned. "You're not just dressing up, you're taking over the narrative. You're not his +1, you're the headline." Raina rolled her eyes, but smiled, just slightly. That evening, the Whitmore ballroom shimmered under golden chandeliers. Business tycoons, senators, celebrities, they all arrived for what was supposed to be a post-wedding celebration. Now it was more like a gathering of skeptics and gossips, buzzing with one question: who is she? Just as the murmurs peaked, the grand staircase lit up. And down descended Raina Brooks, in that emerald gown, in those impossible heels. Her hair pinned elegantly, her makeup flawless, her posture royal. The crowd gasped. One woman whispered, "She looks like a queen." Another hissed, "That can't be the same girl from the suya stand." By the bar, Graham stood with a glass of scotch. When his eyes met hers, he froze. Raina reached the final step, and their eyes locked. "You clean up well," he said under his breath. "And you still look like a constipated statue," she replied. He clenched his jaw. "Try not to embarrass me tonight." I was about to say the same. Moments later, Graham tapped a spoon against his glass. The room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice smooth but cool, "tonight's celebration wasn't planned. Life rarely is. But sometimes, what looks like chaos turns out to be providence." He turned to Raina. "This is my wife, Raina Whitmore." Murmurs rippled. Someone audibly gasped. "Yes," he continued, "I married her. And no, it wasn't out of desperation. It was instinct, because beauty can be bought. Personality can't. And hers." He paused. Raina leaned close, whispered, "Don't pretend you like it." "I don't," he said through a smile, "but it makes for excellent PR." She chuckled. "Liar." Then he turned back to the room. "She challenges me, every word, every stare. And I'd rather be challenged than bored." Polite applause followed, some genuine, some hesitant, but Raina had arrived. Not just in a mansion, not just in a dress, but as someone no one could ignore. The morning sun slipped through the cathedral-style windows of the Whitmore mansion, bathing the guest wing in golden light. Raina Brooks blinked awake beneath silk sheets that felt too soft, too smooth, too unfamiliar. Everything was quiet. Unnaturally so. No honking cars, no shouts from street vendors, no buzzing fans from her old apartment. Just silence, thick and unnerving. She sat up, rubbed her eyes and muttered, "This house too quiet, like it they wait to judge you." The robe she wore was expensive, courtesy of Sloane, of course, but the feeling inside it wasn't luxury. It was isolation. A soft knock tapped against the door. "Come in," she called. The door opened, and Graham Whitmore stepped inside. Tailored navy suit, immaculate collar, the scent of cedarwood and power seemed to walk in before him. "You're expected in the dining room in 15 minutes, he said, voice cold. She tilted her head. "Expected?" "I sign up for military?" "This house runs on discipline and order," he replied. "You're my wife now, certain standards are." "Wife or prisoner?" she snapped. Graham's jaw tightened. "You're not on the street anymore, Raina. Behave like you belong here." Her eyes flared. She stood, robes swishing around her legs. "Don't you dare throw that in my face. I didn't beg you, you found me when your perfect bride ran." "I know you're not Charlotte," he said icily. She knew her place. Raina's hand shot out. Crash! A glass of water shattered against the marble floor between them. "Well, congratulations," she growled. "You married a woman who doesn't know her place and never will." Graham stepped forward, inches from her face. "Careful, Raina. You're playing a dangerous game." She didn't move, didn't blink. "I've played worse. Try me." Downstairs, the air was thick with unspoken tension. Maids dusted corners a little more quietly. Security guards avoided eye contact. Even the chandelier above the long mahogany table seemed to dim its glow. Sloane sat in a silk robe, sipping orange juice with theatrical calm. "Someone woke up spicy," she teased as Graham passed. He poured himself coffee without answering. Moments later, Raina entered. Not in jeans, not in slippers. In one of Sloane's bold floral dresses. It hugged her frame with confident elegance, but her hair was still wild and her glare was unchanged. She sat without a word. Sloane looked between them, grinning. "This is going to be fun." Later that day, Graham stood by the bay window of the sitting room, one hand in his pocket, the other swirling a glass of scotch. The mansion felt too large, the air too still. Then footsteps. Raina walked in wearing one of Sloane's lounge sets, still barefoot, still unbothered. She moved like she owned the floor under her feet. "We'll be hosting a post-wedding dinner this evening," Graham said flatly. "Important people. You need to look the part." She crossed her arms. "What's wrong with how I look?" "Everything." Her eyes narrowed. "I'm not Charlotte." "I'm aware," he said, cool and sharp, "which is why you need help." She stepped closer. "If this is about your reputation—" "It is," he cut in, "and mine is worth 30 million naira. Get yourself together." She let out a bitter laugh. "You should have bought a mannequin, not a wife." Before he could respond, Sloane breezed into the room, phone pressed to her ear. "Already on it," she sang. "Raina, darling, we're about to make magic." "I didn't agree to this," Raina muttered. "You'll thank me," Sloane said, waving her off. "I've called my stylist 5 outfit options, snatched waist-long legs, fire attitude. You're welcome." That evening, the mansion turned into a controlled hurricane. Stylists pinned, dusted, adjusted. Makeup artists whispered compliments to mask tension, hair sprayed. Lips glossed, eyebrows arched with surgical precision. Raina sat in the center of it all, still, unreadable, quietly watching herself disappear under foundation and perfume. "This is ridiculous," she murmured. "No," Sloane replied, holding up a sparkling necklace. "This is reinvention. Edward may not admit it, but he'll notice. He always notices what he tries to ignore." One stylist whispered, I can't believe this is the same woman. Raina heard and smiled, just a little. By nightfall, the house was ready. So was Raina. She walked down the staircase not like a guest, not like an outsider, but like a question mark no one could ignore. She was a contradiction wrapped in emerald silk. And when Graham Whitmore saw her, something shifted behind his guarded eyes. He blinked, swallowed, then looked away. Raina walked to his side, her voice a whisper. "This what you wanted, right?" Graham didn't answer. He simply offered his arm. She took it. Lightly, like it was nothing. Like she hadn't just shaken the foundation of everything he thought he controlled. The morning after the dinner party, the Whitmore mansion was unnervingly still. Empty glasses lined the bar. The perfume of expensive guests still lingered in the hallway. But upstairs, Raina Brooks was already awake, sitting by the window of the guest room with a cup of black coffee and a notebook in her lap. She wasn't thinking about who whispered what last night. She wasn't replaying Graham's stiff smile or the way some women looked at her dress like it came from a thrift store. No, she was thinking about jollof rice, about pepper soup that made you sweat and smile at the same time, about her mother's old recipes scribbled on torn napkins. She was thinking about home. By noon, Raina had opened a business account with 30 million naira freshly deposited by Graham Whitmore, just like he'd promised. She didn't ask again. She didn't have to. The contract was done, the performance was running, and now she was ready to write her own script. She spent the next 3 days hunting for the right space. Not too flashy, not too forgotten. Finally, she found Iton, old, abandoned shopfront at the corner of a busy street in Brooklyn. The windows were cracked, the paint was peeling, but to Raina, it looked like possibility. She stood outside in the late afternoon light, arms folded, a wide smile spreading across her face. "This Na'am," she whispered, "my own palace." What followed was a storm of renovations. She painted the exterior in rich earth tonus terracotta and honey gold-warm colors that felt like comfort. She designed the interior herself, polished wood floors, velvet seating, fresh flowers on every table, and chandeliers that glowed without being loud. Every detail had a purpose. Menus were printed in cream and maroon, the name embossed in gold foil, Raina's haven where taste meets class. She hired 5 waiters, 2 chefs, 1 manager. She trained them herself. "This no bisuya joint," she told them, grinning, "but we still serve it with fire." Opening night was electric. A line snaked down the block. Influencers filmed their appetizers. Local food bloggers whispered about the woman who went from street vendor to executive chef. Raina wore a maroon jumpsuit with gold trim and a matching head wrap. Her heels clicked across the tiled floor as she moved from table to table, balancing trays, greeting guests, cracking jokes in her signature blend of pidgin and polished English. "Madam, your pepper soup fit wake up a sleeping president," one guest laughed. Raina winked. "Good. I like my food like I like my business, unapologetic." She didn't just run the room, she owned it. Back at the mansion, Graham scrolled through social media on his phone in the dark. Every other post featured her, #Raina's Haven, street queen turned boss lady. She served me suya and wisdom. He watched a short video of her laughing with customers, one hand on her hip, the other holding a tray like a crown. She was magnetic, unstoppable, unbought. And for a moment he smiled. Just a little. Then he looked around his empty study, the walls lined with art he barely noticed, and whispered to himself, "She's not playing the role anymore. She's writing the script." 1 week later, he visited. No camera crew, no PR stunt, just Graham, in a casual black suit, stepping into Raina's haven for the first time. The place buzzed with laughter, and the scent of grilled tilapia and fried plantains. Raina was mid-conversation with a customer when she saw him. Her eyes flicked to him neutral, unreadable. He walked toward her, hands in his pockets. "You built all this in a week?" She nodded. "Some of us don't need committees to make decisions." "It's impressive," he said. "I didn't do it to impress you." "I know." They stood in silence for a moment as the hum of the restaurant wrapped around them. Finally, she asked, "Why are you really here?" Graham hesitated. "To see what 30 million bought." Raina's jaw tensed, but she didn't rise to the bait. She leaned in. "You didn't buy this," she said softly. "You didn't buy me. You just paid the price for ignoring someone like me all your life." And with that, she walked away to greet a table of waiting customers, her heels clicking confidently, her voice rising above the clinking glasses. Later that night, she called her childhood friend Jada Simmons. "Guess wettin'," Raina said, barefoot in her office, her maroon apron tossed over the back of a chair. "I marry Billionaire, but no the business they make me proud, not the man." Jada laughed. "I always told you, Raina, you weren't built to be someone's +1, you were born to be the headline." Raina smiled at the ceiling. "Yeah, and I'm just getting started." The next evening, Raina's haven was glowing. Not just from the golden sconces lining the walls or the low jazz humming through the ceiling speakers, but from the pulse of something real, something alive. Every table was filled. Laughter bounced between champagne glasses. The kitchen buzzed like a symphony. Raina Brooks, in a tailored navy jumpsuit with golden embroidery and heels that somehow still obeyed her, was everywhere, greeting, serving. Leading, she was the engine. The soul, the queen of her own castle. Then the front door chimed. And Graham Whitmore walked in. He wasn't in a tuxedo. He wasn't followed by cameras or staff. Just a sharp black suit, no tie, and a look on his face no one had seen before, focused, nervous. Human. A hush fell over the room. Raina's eyes locked on his from across the floor. Her smile flickered, just briefly, before she turned back to a table. "Enjoy your meal, sir, and let us know if the spice hits too hard." But Graham didn't sit. He walked, straight past tables, past murmurs and stares, toward the stage where a soft jazz band was finishing its final set. He stepped up, cleared his throat, took the mic. All eyes turned. Even the waiters froze. Even Raina. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady but low. "Forgive me for interrupting your evening." He paused, scanning the room, then letting his eyes land on her. "I didn't come here as a billionaire, or as the man some of you saw get left at the altar 2 weeks ago." Light laughter. A few awkward chuckles. "I came here tonight as a man who's finally realized something important." The band had gone silent. The kitchen, too. "You see, I married this woman Raina Brooks under a contract. A business arrangement. I was trying to protect my pride, my image, my empire." His voice cracked slightly. "But what I didn't realize then was that the very woman I thought I was hiring to protect my name ended up saving it." The room was quiet. Even the wine glasses had stopped clinking. "I've watched her build this place. I've watched her turn 30 million into something no money could ever buy, dignity, power." Grace. He turned toward Raina fully now. And somewhere between the press appearances and staged photos, I fell in love. Gasps. Audible. But Raina didn't move. Her hand clutched a tray, her lips slightly parted. "I love you, Raina," Graham said, his voice now softer but resolute. "Not because you dress the part now or because this restaurant is stunning, though it is. I love you because you didn't need me." He took a breath. "You stood up to me. You refused to shrink. You made me feel something I hadn't felt in years." He stepped off the stage, microphone in hand, eyes still locked on her. "You reminded me that love isn't perfect. It's earned, and I'm willing to earn it." He extended his hand toward her. The room held its breath. Raina stepped forward slowly, her heels clicking like thunder on tile. She stopped in front of him, looked him up and down, and said, in that beautiful street-sweet pigeon. You think, say, not only you get feelings. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Then she switched, effortlessly, to clear, heartfelt English. Graham, I've been falling for you too, even when you were annoying, even when you tried to treat me like a trophy. She placed her palm on his chest. I saw the man behind the money. I saw the boy behind the control, and somehow I cared. He swallowed hard. Raina grinned. But let's be clear, if you mess up, I still go pepper your life. The crowd erupted. Graham chuckled, reached into his inner jacket pocket, and pulled out a small velvet box. This isn't a wedding ring, he said. We already have that. He opened it. A brilliant blue sapphire surrounded by diamonds. This is my commitment ring, a promise to love you for real. No more scripts, no more contracts, just us. Tears welled in Raina's eyes. She let him slide it onto her finger, right beside the original gold band. Then she did something no one expected. She leaned in and kissed him, not the polite, for the camera kind, but something soft. Solid real. The restaurant exploded in applause. Sloane stood at the back, raising a glass of champagne. Finally, she shouted. Took them long enough. That night, the cameras didn't matter. The press didn't matter. Even the whispers turned into claps, and the old judgments turned into curious admiration. They weren't Graham the billionaire and Raina the street girl anymore. They were just two people who had found something most people spend a lifetime chasing, a love that survived pride and proved itself real. The celebration that night at Raina's Haven still echoed in the air the next morning. The restaurant had quieted, the lights dimmed. But the moment that kiss, that ring, that declarations still burned in Raina's chest like a brand. She sat alone at the counter, swirling her tea in a ceramic mug, barefoot, robe tied loosely. Her makeup from last night had long faded, but her thoughts had not. She loved him. She had said it out loud, but love wasn't a finish line. It was a threshold. And Graham Whitmore, for all his gestures, still had a long way to walk through that door. Back at the Whitmore estate, Graham stood in front of his floor-length mirror, adjusting his cufflinks. The sapphire ring he'd given Raina hadn't left his mind. Her smile when he slipped it on, her teasing words, the way her lips tasted like confidence and honey. But as he stared at his reflection, he wondered, was that enough? Could grand gestures rewrite months of control? Could love survive if it didn't come with respect? He picked up his phone and typed a message. Come home tonight. Let's talk, no stage, no cameras, just us. He hesitated, then sent it. That evening, Raina walked through the grand doors of the mansion, not in heels or gowns, but in a simple black dress, hair pulled back into a soft bun. She wasn't here to perform. She wasn't here to dazzle. She was here to speak plainly. Graham met her in the sitting room, a fire low in the hearth, soft jazz humming in the background. For once, he wore no blazer, no tie, just a plain grey sweater and bare honesty in his eyes. You came, he said quietly. I did, she answered, sitting across from him. But before we talk about us, there's something I need to say. He nodded, bracing. You can't keep loving me the way you run a company, she said. With performance reviews and expectations, I'm not one of your projects, Graham. He exhaled. I know. No, I don't think you do, she said, sharper now. Because even after that ring, I still feel like you think you're the one who gets to decide when I'm enough. When I look right, act right, sound right. Graham lowered his eyes. Raina. She leaned forward. I love you, Graham. That's real. But if we're doing this for real, not for press, not for appearances, then it can't just be love. It has to be respect, full respect, as your partner, your equal. There was a long silence between them. The kind that makes or breaks everything. Then Graham stood and walked over to her slowly. You're right, he said. You always were. He knelt not with flair, not for drama, just truth. I didn't grow up knowing how to love like that. I grew up learning how to control everything, how to fix problems. But you're not a problem. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. She blinked, lips trembling slightly. He reached for her hands. I can't promise perfection, but I can promise to learn, to listen, to let go of whatever made me think being a man meant being in charge. Raina stared at him, heart thudding. And then very softly, she pulled him up to sit beside her. I don't need a prince, she whispered. I just need a man who sees me, who really sees me. I do now, Graham replied. I see you, Raina Brooks Whitmore, all of you. They sat like that, forehead to forehead, in a silence that felt more sacred than any vow. The next morning, Raina woke up in her old guest room, but something had changed. She walked into the master suite to find Graham already awake, seated at his desk, staring at a photograph. It was Charlotte Hayes, the woman who had once stood beside him in lace and perfection. Raina didn't flinch. She walked to the window, opened the curtain, letting light pour in. She hurt you, she said gently. But I'm not her. I'm not here to leave. But I'm not here to disappear inside your shadow either. Graham nodded. And I'm not asking you to. He opened a drawer and quietly put the photo away. I made peace with the past, he said. Now I want to build something real with you. Later that week, the two of them arrived together at a charity gala in Harlem. It was their first public appearance since the commitment ring, and this time, Raina wasn't introduced as Graham Whitmore's wife. She was introduced as the founder and CEO of Raina's Haven. The room applauded. Cameras flashed, and for once, Graham didn't stand in front of her. He stood beside her. At the after-party, a young intern approached Raina, eyes wide. Can I ask, how did you go from Suya Stan to this? Raina laughed. I stopped waiting to be chosen, and I started choosing myself. Graham, holding her hand, whispered, Best choice I ever made. The rain came quietly that night, tapping against the windows of the Whitmore penthouse like a soft reminder of things left unsaid. The city below still pulsed cars, lights, late-night wanderers, but up here, the silence was sacred. Graham Whitmore sat alone in his study, not with spreadsheets, not with a whiskey in hand, but with a photo. It was the last one taken of him and Charlotte Hayes, a black and white print from their engagement party. She was smiling. He wasn't. Not really. He stared at it for a long time, then finally whispered to no one, I wasn't kind to you. I wasn't fair. He picked up his phone, paused, then dialed. The line rang once, twice. Then, her voice, clear, steady, distant. Graham. He closed his eyes. Hi, Charlotte. A beat. Then, you don't usually call people you've paid lawyers to forget. He gave a small, sad smile. I deserve that. Why now? He exhaled. Because I owe you something, and not the kind of thing that fits in a legal settlement. Silence. Then Charlotte's voice softened, just a little. Go on. Graham stood and paced the room slowly. I wasn't just cold to you, I was cruel. I treated you like part of a brand. I pushed you to fit into an image I created, and when you couldn't breathe inside that image, you ran. And you made me look like the villain, she replied. I know, he said gently. I used the media. I let people think you were unstable. I weaponized silence and pride. He sat down again, elbows on his knees. But the truth is, you did the bravest thing anyone's ever done to me. You walked away from power, from pressure, from me. And I hated you for it because it exposed everything I didn't want to admit. Charlotte's breath caught audibly over the line. I'm sorry, he said simply. There was a long pause. I used to wish you'd say that, she whispered. I wish I had said it sooner. Another pause. Is this about your new wife? She asked. Yes and no, Graham admitted. Raina isn't you. She's not trying to be. She's fire. And I nearly made the same mistakes, tried to shape her into something she never needed to become. But she didn't let you, Charlotte said, almost amused. No, she didn't. He smiled faintly. She challenged me in ways that scared me, and somehow that saved me. Charlotte was quiet again, then softly, I'm in a better place now, Graham. I'm happy I don't regret leaving, but I do appreciate this call. He nodded. Thank you for taking it. I hope you treat her better than you treated me. I already am, he said. And I'll keep trying every day. He hung up, and for the first time in years, the past stopped chasing him. Meanwhile, across town, Raina Brooks was in the kitchen of the mansion, barefoot in flannel pajamas, slicing up mangoes and humming to herself. When Graham walked in, drenched from the rain, she looked up, startled. You walk home in the storm? I needed to, he said. She poured him a glass of water. That look on your face, what happened? He took the glass, drank slowly, then leaned against the counter. I called Charlotte, he said. Raina's hands paused. Oh? He nodded. To apologize. To mean it. Not because I want her back, but because I wanted to let her go the right way. She didn't speak. He stepped closer. You once told me love without respect isn't enough. Yes, she said softly. Well, he replied, this was respect. For her, for myself, for what comes next. Her eyes held his, warm, surprised. A little proud. Good, she said. Because this, she gestured between them, only works if there are no ghosts sitting at our table. He nodded. Ghosts are gone. She handed him a slice of mango. Then you can stay. That weekend, they hosted a small dinner not for business, not for press, but for people who mattered. Sloane Whitmore came, draped in vintage silk and zero filter as usual. Tell me this isn't just the soft launch before y'all elope in Italy. Jada Simmons, Raina's childhood friend, arrived with a big smile and a gift basket of plantains and suya spice. I just wanted to see it with my own eyes. This billionaire actually looks human now. Graham laughed for real that night, not the guarded kind, not the forced one, but the laugh of a man finally at peace with his past and in love with his present. Later, as the house quieted and the candles dimmed, Graham and Raina stood on the balcony, the city glittering beneath them. You feel different, she said, leaning into him. I am. She smiled. Good, because I don't do halfway men. I don't do halfway love anymore. They stood like that for a long time, hands entwined, no cameras, no contracts, just two people learning how to build something real with nothing but truth, time, and second chances. It was a Sunday morning, the kind of morning that made even New York feel like it was on pause. The air was crisp. Light spilled gently through the mansion's tall windows. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang. And in the kitchen of Whitmore Estate, Raina Brooks was flipping pancakes, barefoot, hair wrapped in a silk scarf, wearing one of Graham's oversized t-shirts that hung off her shoulder. It was her third Sunday like this, but today felt different, not because of the pancakes, not even because Graham, usually glued to his emails, had walked in humming a song neither of them could name. It was because of the key. Earlier that morning, Graham had opened the drawer in his study and pulled out a tiny velvet box. But inside wasn't a ring. It was a key card, the kind that opened his master bedroom. The room he had always kept closed. The room that had once been filled with cold routines, monogrammed bathrobes, and a king-sized bed that felt more like a display than a place to rest. He carried the box downstairs like it weighed more than his entire fortune. And now, standing across the kitchen island from Raina, he slid it toward her. She raised an eyebrow. What's this? A tiny, safe deposit box? He smirked. Close, it's a key
to the master suite. She blinked. You're giving me access to the Batcave? I'm asking you to move in. Raina folded her arms, lips twitching with amusement.
Took you long enough. But this time, he said, voice softer, it's not about status or appearances. It's not about guests or arrangements. It's about choosing you every morning, every night, not just in public, but here, where it counts. Raina went quiet. The griddle sizzled beside them, but neither moved. Then she reached for the box, opened it, and looked up. You sure you're ready for plantain peels in your trash can? He laughed. Completely. She leaned in, kissed his cheek. Then get ready for hairpins in your sink. That afternoon, Raina moved in. Not with a grand procession, not with stylists or suitcases, just with a small overnight bag, a stack of books, and the kind of confidence that made marble floors feel like home. She didn't change the decor. She added to it. A throw blanket here, a diffuser with cinnamon scent, a framed photo of her and her staff at Raina's Haven, laughing with plates in hand. Graham stood in the doorway watching. It was no longer just his room. It was theirs. The days that followed were quieter, but fuller. They shared coffee without checking their phones. They argued about the right spice level for stew and whether a throw pillow really needed tassels. But more than anything, they learned how to be soft with each other. Not just strong, not just impressive, but gentle. One evening, after dinner, Raina walked out onto the balcony, wrapped in a fleece blanket. The city glittered before her. Graham joined her, 2 glasses of wine in hand. He handed her one. To silence. She raised her glass. To not needing to perform. They clinked. Then she looked up at him. Do you ever miss the old version of your life? She asked. The one where everything was curated and nothing was questioned. He considered the skyline for a moment. I miss the control, he said honestly, but I don't miss how empty it felt. And now? He looked at her. Now I come home, and the lights don't just turn on, the rooms feel warm, alive, and I don't flinch when I hear laughter anymore. I look for it. Raina smiled. Progress. Progress, he echoed, grinning. Later that night, while folding laundry on the bed, Raina found a scrap of paper tucked between Graham's shirt pockets. It was handwritten. Faded. She recognized it instantly. Her old suya recipe. Tears welled in her eyes. She walked into the study, where Graham was reading, and held up the note. You kept this? He looked up, caught off guard. Of course, that was the first thing I noticed about you, your fire, and how you made everything you touched better, even grilled meat. Raina laughed through the tears. I thought you forgot. I never forget what teaches me something, he said gently. And you taught me how to feel again. She crossed the room, curled into his lap, and rested her head against his chest. They sat like that, no more words needed. That weekend, they returned to Raina's Haven, but this time not for business. Just as patrons, they sat at a corner table. Graham wore jeans for the first time in years. Raina ordered coconut rice without blinking. The staff treated them like family. A woman from another table approached Raina as they were finishing dessert. Are you her? She whispered. The woman who married the billionaire, but still opens her own doors? Raina smiled. I am. The woman blushed. You give the rest of us hope. Raina squeezed her hand. Never wait for permission to become the version of you already are. As they walked out that night, hand in hand, a young girl outside waved shyly at Raina. She waved back, then looked up at Graham. We're not done surprising the world, are we? He shook his head. Not even close. It started as a simple idea. No press, no sponsors, no guest list curated by assistants in navy suits. Just a chalkboard sign outside Raina's Haven that read, Community Sunday, free food, good music, real love, all welcome. And somehow, it grew. By noon, the sidewalk outside the restaurant overflowed with people, families from the neighborhood, elderly couples with folding chairs, teenagers recording on their phones, even the man from the bookstore down the block who always waved but never came in. Inside, the tables had been cleared. No reservations. No name tags, just music and plates. And laughter. Raina Brooks, dressed in denim overalls and white sneakers, was in her element. Her curls were tied back in a red bandana, her face bare, glowing. She moved through the crowd like sunlight, hugging, serving, dancing. Beside her, holding a tray of puff-puffs like it was a silver briefcase, was Graham Whitmore. Yes, that Graham. In a plain t-shirt, in jeans, carrying desserts and grinning like he belonged. Because he did. "Hey, billionaire," someone teased from the crowd. "I thought your kind only showed up with cameras and photo ops." Graham laughed. "Only when I need an excuse to avoid paperwork." A woman nearby nudged her daughter. "That's him, the one who married the Suya queen." The little girl whispered, "But he doesn't look rich." And Raina, overhearing, turned and smiled. "Sweetheart, the richest people are the ones who show up without needing applause." At 3 p.m. the music softened. Raina took the mic not to make a speech, but to share a moment. "Some of y'all know my story," she said. "Some of y'all were there when I sold water in traffic and got chased by market guards." Chuckles rippled. "But today ain't about where I came from. It's about what we're building." She turned toward Graham. "This man right here, he thought he was saving his image. Turns out he was saving his soul." Laughter and claps. "And me? I didn't need a savior. I needed a partner, a man who could stand beside me without trying to change me." Graham raised his glass. "To that woman," he said, voice low and sure. "The only person I've ever met who could run a kitchen, a business, and a marriage with the same spoon." Later that night, as the tables were folded away and the candles burned low, Raina and Graham stood in the doorway of the restaurant, watching the last few neighbors say goodbye. A little girl ran up to Raina with a crayon drawing. It was of Raina and Graham, holding hands in front of the restaurant with the words in a crooked heart, "Real love." Raina knelt down. "What's this, baby girl?" The girl shrugged. "I just wanted you to remember today." Raina blinked back tears. "I will forever." Back at the mansion, they didn't talk much that night. They didn't need to. Raina sat on the edge of the bed, holding the drawing like it was gold. Graham walked over, kissed her forehead and said, "You know, when this all started, I thought I needed someone to complete me." She looked up. "And now? Now I know I needed someone to challenge me, to see me, to choose me even on my worst days." She nodded. "And I needed someone who'd let me be loud. Free but still hold my hand when I needed grounding." They kissed. Not the kiss of fireworks or endings, but the kind of kiss that says, "We're still choosing this." Every single day. 6 months later, Raina's Haven had expanded to 2 new locations, but the original stayed open, because that's where the soul lives, she said. Graham had stepped back from boardrooms, invested in mentorship programs, started visiting schools in neighborhoods he once avoided, and every Sunday, without fail, they still served free food to anyone who needed it. No press. No hashtags, just love, on a plate. The story didn't end in luxury. It ended in laughter, in music, in faith restored, and in the quiet decision, repeated over time, that real love can't be bought, but it can be built. Not with diamonds, not with contracts, but with respect, humility, and the kind of courage that stands firm not in front, not behind, but beside the person you choose. Every single day. In a world where everything seems transactional, this story reminds us of a timeless truth. Real love cannot be bought, it must be chosen. Graham, a billionaire left humiliated at the altar, finds unexpected connection with Raina a woman of grit and soul. Their journey from a contract marriage to genuine partnership is not about wealth or status, but about humility, respect, and the willingness to grow together. For older audiences, this is a gentle reminder that it's never too late to begin again. Love doesn't always arrive in a grand gesture. Sometimes it shows up in a quiet kitchen, in a shared laugh, or in the courage to apologize and try again. The deepest relationships are not built on perfection, but on presence, on being willing to show up, listen, and love someone as they are. No matter your past, your losses, or your regrets, if you're still breathing, you're still capable of loving and being loved in a way that's honest, healing, and real. And maybe that's the greatest wealth of all, to be chosen, not for what you have, but for who you are.